What if the race to save the planet is actually a new form of colonialism? The global north is celebrating a green energy revolution, electric cars, solar grid, but for Africa, this transition is a multi-billion-dollar trap. While corporations build their net zero futures on African minerals, African nations are being buried under heavy loans, high interest rates, and devastating ecological debt. We are forced to export our raw wealth only to buy back expensive green technology that we can't even afford. Africa sits on the exact minerals the world needs for a clean future. Yet the continent is paying for a staggering price for the privilege. Today, we expose the hidden financial machinery turning global climate into a modern-day economic heist. To understand how we got here, look at the math. The world cannot build electric vehicles and grid-scale batteries without critical minerals, lithium, cobalt, magnesium, and other rare earth minerals. The global south, particularly Africa, holds about 70% of the world's transitional mineral reserves, which could significantly boost the continent's economy if we were living in a fair world. But the reality is staggering. Despite having the world's highest potential for solar power, Africa receives 2% of global renewable energy investment. Meanwhile, over 600 million Africans still lack basic access to electricity. Why? Because the international financial system has rigged the game through a concept economists call the cost of capital. Think of building a green power plant like buying a house. Fossil fuel plants are cheap to build but expensive to run because you constantly have to buy coal or gas. Solar and wind are the exact opposite. They are incredibly cheap to run. The sun and the wind are free, but they require massive, expensive upfront investment to build. If a European government wants to build a solar farm, they can just borrow money at an interest of 2 or 3%. But when an African nation tries to borrow money for the same exact solar farm, international market slaps them with interest rates of up to 20% due to perceived country risks. Data shows that the cost of powering communities is nearly twice as high in Africa countries compared to advanced economies. The climate label doesn't change underlying credit bias. Africa isn't failing to go green because it lacks resources. It's being priced out of its own sunshine. It gets worse. To bypass the fact that African governments don't have trillions of dollars sitting around, Western institutions push a specific solution: green bonds, sustainability-linked loans, and private power purchase agreement. When an international consortium builds a renewable energy project in Africa, the contracts are almost always dominated in foreign currencies like US dollars or euros. This protects the wealthy investors from local currency fluctuations. But look at what happens to the African country. The state-owned utility collects electricity bills from its citizens in local currency. If the local currency devalues, which happens frequently due to macroeconomic pressure, the government still has to pay back the investors in rock-solid American dollars. Suddenly, a project meant to provide clean energy becomes a massive, uncontrollable liability on the national budget. More than a third of sub-Saharan African nations are now either in severe debt distress or at high risk of it. Countries like Kenya, and Egypt are trapped spending money servicing their external debt than they do on healthcare and education combined. While the financial machinery drains African capital, the physical supply chain drains African soil. This is the rise of green extractivism. The historical playbook of the colonial era is being reproduced under a glossy green banner. Raw materials are being ripped out of the global south, Africa to be precise, shipped away to be processed in China and other Western countries, and all the high-value manufacturing profits are captured by the richest corporations. Take the Democratic Republic of Congo, which unearths over 70% of the world's cobalt. The DRC captures as little as 14% of the financial value of that cobalt that they have. If the country could retain full value of its resources, it would generate over $4 billion annually, enough to provide clean energy to have its entire population. Instead, the profits are being repatriated abroad. What stays behind is human rights violations, forced displacement, toxic water systems, and communities transformed into ecological sacrificial zones to keep European and American electric vehicles running cleanly. And Western regulations are quietly locking this imbalance into place. Policies like Europe's Critical Mineral Act or the US Inflation Reduction Act are framed as climate security. But look closely, they heavily incentivize friendshoring and securing supply corridors
like the Lobito Corridor
in Angola, specifically to extract raw materials faster while bypassing competitors. They are creating trade barriers that prevent African nations from building their own domestic factories to process these minerals. They want Africans' raw wealth, not Africa's industrial competition.
It is difficult to go borrowing money from people. They subject you to all manner of things. You know, do this, go and pass this law. How about those things, what are those ones called? You go and pass the sexuality laws, go and do this, go and do this. You know, things that have nothing to do with the money you're looking for.
But African nations are no longer staying silent. A historical shift is brewing across the continent, centered on resource sovereignty. The African Union has pushed forward its African Green Minerals Strategy. The core mandate is clear: no more exporting raw materials, unfinished minerals. If the world wants Africa's lithium, cobalt, the world must build processing plants inside Africa. Countries are beginning to ban export of raw lithium, forcing international mining conglomerates to invest in local refining infrastructure. By building local value chains, Africa can create multi-million high-skill industrial jobs and transform the economy from a raw material supplier into a green technology powerhouse. True climate justice means the global north must stop viewing Africa as a continent to be looted or a subprime borrower to be exploited. The global energy transition cannot be built on a foundation of financial extraction. A truly just transition requires a complete overhaul of global lending, massive debt relief, and fair trade partnerships that treat African nations as equal industrial peers. Until that happens, the green energy revolution will remain an old story. What do you think about green transition? Is this just a new form of resource colonialism, or can Africa turn the tables? Let us know in the comment section below. Do not forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video to expose the hidden mechanics of global economy. Till next time, see you again.